Good evening. Here is top news newsletter, starting with the headlines. President al-Assad's visit increased determination to defend homeland. Syrian army units killed terrorists to destroy their gathering and weapons in different areas. ISIS executes 15 civilians of Jamlat trip in Fallujah. The Syrian army soldier officers and Popular Defense Forces stationed in Jobar affirmed Thursday that President Bashar al-Assad's visit to them at the beginning of the new year increased their determination to continue the war of defending Syria against terrorists. The army soldiers and forces said the visit of the president has fortified their determination and strengthened their belief in the approach of defeating the terrorist aggression project against Syria. The visit has increased the hope that we will celebrate the coming of the next year in our houses and with our families after we accomplished our duties in restoring security and stability to Syria, one of the army's officers said. Another member in the Popular Defense Forces said the president's visit and his participation in our support on the front line have increased our morals to achieve new victories on terrorism. The army carried out a series of military operations against dens and gatherings of armed terrorist organizations in Syria, different cities, killing scores of terrorists and destroying their weaponry. In Damascus countryside, the army destroyed dens of terrorists and inflicted heavy losses upon them near the court buildings and harassed and entrance of Misraba. The army also killed many terrorists during a number of operations in Douma, and army pursued terrorists in Al-Qasimiyya and Nashabiyya and destroying their weaponry and ammunition. In Idlib, the army killed scores of terrorists, among them leaders of Libya and Yemen, destroying a number of their vehicles in Al-Qastan, Jabal al-Akrad, Ain al-Barde, and Ain al-Soda. In Daraa, the army killed many terrorists and smashed their weaponry in Busra al-Harir, Atman, and Al-Sheikh Miskin, and killed a number of terrorists and injured many others at the vocational training center. In Homs, the army killed many terrorists in Al-Masada, Ain Hussein, in Homs countryside, and foiled an attempt by the terrorists to infiltrate into the farm of Al-War. Meanwhile, in Al-Hasaka, the army smashed dens of the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, the so-called ISIS terrorist organization in Al-Khama'il and Al-Milabiyya. In Latakia, units of the army and armed forces targeted terrorist gatherings of what is called Al-Nusra Front. The unit targeted terrorist gatherings in Al-Qasab, Al-Rabi'a, Al-Kabir, and Al-Zahi mountain and killing and injuring members of terrorists. Additionally, the units destroyed weapon cache, mortar launchers, and vehicles loaded with weapons and ammunition, some of the heavy machine gun. Earlier, the army destroyed gatherings and weapons of Jabhat al-Nusra terrorists, killing many of them in Abu Rish, Al-Samur, and Kutfur Rumman. Security source told Iraqis Newscom the 15 young men refused to join the so-called ISIS terrorists were executed in Fallujah. Meanwhile, the Iraqi Minister of Defense confirmed liberating four villages within Mosul city from the terrorists of the so-called ISIS. The statement cited a force from Iraqi Army 19th Division supported by Kurdish Peshmerga forces managed to liberate the village of Tel al-Sha'ir, Juwaizat al-Tahtaniya, and Sultan Abdullah and raised the Iraqi flags over these villages. Military operations are still going on this area, as the statement added. On the other side, the United States and its allies staged 29 airstrikes on the so-called Islamic State targets in Syria and Iraq as a combined joint task force said. The action in Syria included 17 strikes near the cities of Al-Raqqa, Deir ez-Zor, and Kobani. A variety of ISIS buildings, fighting positions, and units were hit. In Iraq, 10 strikes targets the so-called ISIS buildings, fighting positions, and unit near the cities of Al-Mosul, Fallujah, and Sinjar. In the Russian view, Russian rescuers arrive in Indonesia to assist an Air Asia search. 2 Russian planes with 72 rescue personnel have arrived in Indonesia to assist the country to search for the missing Air Asia flight 951. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Colonel Alexander Drobishevsky said. 2 emergency military planes, an IL-76 and a PE-200 have landed at the Jakarta airport, as he said. The Russian planes are carrying sonars, diving equipment, and drones to search the area where there may be a missing plane. The AirAsia plane disappeared Sunday morning amid poor weather as it was flying from Indonesia's second largest city, Surabaya, to Singapore. 2 Saudis beheaded in first executions of 2015. 2 Saudis convicted of drug trafficking became the first people executed in 2015 in the Muslim kingdom, which beheaded 87 people last year, according to an AFP. Malik bin Said al-Sayyar was put to the sword Thursday in Al-Hassa after a repeat conviction for hashish smuggling, the Interior Ministry said. Al-Hussein al-Dusari was beheaded in a Riyadh region for shooting dead a policeman on anti-drugs patrol who was trying to arrest him. Saudi Arabia has stepped up its use of the death penalty despite repeated appeals from the United Nations and human rights watchdogs. Last year's tally marked a significant increase of the 78 executions recorded in 2013. Rape, murder, apostasy, and armed robbery, as well as drug trafficking are punishable by death under Saudi Arabia's law. That's all for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Inaz Ahmad. Good night.